You're listening to Distraction Therapy. Conversations and sound walks at a time of change. With me, Rob Watson. Hello, it's Sunday the 9th of May. I'm Rob Watson and I've come out of the house for a stroll, and I thought I'd just record what's around me. I'm back at Aylestone Meadows, which is one of the regular places that's fairly pleasant to come out for a walk in Leicester, and there's plenty of bird sounds. I wanted to stay away from the town centre today. I've been in a couple of times this weekend, and being around lots of people is maybe something to be avoided at the moment. But I'm just going to mooch around and try and capture some thoughts and some sounds, and just have a pleasant evening. It's late in the afternoon. I think it's gone 5 o'clock. Let's just check. Yeah, no, about 5:45. So it's that time when you're making the most of the later evenings, and you've got plenty of daylight now, but unfortunately the weather's still a bit cold, and the last couple of weeks it's been cold to the bones, as you've probably heard me complain in successive previous episodes over the last few weeks. But it is mild today, and that makes a big difference. I've got less to moan about. So I'm just going to have a wander around and see what comes to mind. It's changed since I was last here because the trees have now got the leaves have filled out, and there's a green canopy overhead, and the undergrowth is coming through, so the brambles and the nettles, they're starting to appear, and there's lots of insects around, so there's bees and hornets, and it really is a kind of kind of mid-spring blooming of life, which, when you think back to what it was like in the winter, and it was barren and lifeless, well, not completely lifeless obviously, but largely lifeless, it's a complete transformation, and we get such a short window of opportunity to appreciate it. Almost, my favourite month is June, because everything in May is still becoming, but in June it's kind of arrived, and as it works through July and August, it kind of passes its peak by the time it gets through to August, and then you're leading into September and the autumn, wishing time away here, and it is nice to just stop and appreciate what we have around us, and it helps with kind of all sorts of things, really. I mean, for myself, it's a really great way of managing your anxiety levels. There's nothing better for me than to process my kind of anxious thoughts, and when I'm feeling things getting on top of me or overwhelming me, that I will put some headphones on, listen to some music, and get out for a walk, or a podcast and get out for a walk for a couple of hours and just get absorbed in that. And there's something about the kind of the locomotion, the movement, the walking that helps to process. And I remember reading something about Beethoven used to compose when he went walking, he'd compose in his head, and many philosophers as well would, I think it was Heidegger, would long walking tours through the Alps, and you do your thinking as you're walking, and it's not about sitting at a desk trying to bring these thoughts forward, but it's about giving yourself space to exercise them, not just physically but mentally as well. And hopefully, now that the restrictions for the lockdown are easing, I'll be able to jump on a bus or a train and start getting out and getting a bit further afield than the city, and start getting out into the countryside, and maybe do the occasional walk out in the hills, and to just get a different landscape in front of me and beneath my feet. I've not been quite motivated yet to get up for the dawn chorus, as lovely as the dawn chorus is. I'm safely ensconced in my bed at 4 o'clock in the morning. But there's the dusk chorus, which is when the birds are settling down. It's a bit too early for that at the moment. And even in the city, you can still appreciate the bird song. I can recall, during the lockdown, sitting in the yard and listening to the thrushes on the hopping from one television aerial and chimney to another, and sitting in the morning having a coffee, and there's birds awakening the street. You get less the closer you are to the traffic, because the noise drowns it out, whereas when you're even just a few yards away and you can't hear the rumble of the traffic, then you can hear the bird song then. over the last year or so, I've managed to get back into the cycle of reading a lot more, which has been nice. There's nothing better than listening to some music and to get lost in a book. And one of the main people I've been reading and following up on is the psychoanalyst Carl Jung, who really is it was ahead of his time in the way that he was explaining the depths of our personalities, not just our personalities, they're kind of fairly surface things, but our psyche. And what Jung argued was that we often, when we go through periods of change or turmoil or anguish or anxiety, is that we should hold the tension of the conflicting elements of that, the desire to be part of a group versus the desire to be individually grounded. And he called it the individuation process. And what he argued was that you kind of got to hold them. Don't try and resolve them. They are paradoxes. They won't resolve. But something else will come forward as a kind of transcendent thing that allows you to move on and to find a new way of incorporating those things that were formerly in conflict. And it really does help me to think about the kind of anxieties that I have and carry with me, is that there's a desire to do things well, but also a desire not to be ignored. These are basic kind of functions. These are basic premises that we all carry with us. But it's not until you get into a position where you're cut off from the routines that used to sustain you that you realise how dependent you are on them. So, for example, there are many people who've kind of returned back to pub life, and they need to meet up with their friends and the people that they know and have a pint and sit and chat and talk. And it's a basic kind of level of engagement, socialisation. But they're kind of, are you driven by that, or do you choose to do that? And again, one of the things I like about Carl Jung, he says, we don't have emotions, emotions have us. And how much of our experience is something that we navigate and that we choose. Our ego is that small boat bobbing on the ocean of our unconscious psyche. And what we're doing is we're just kind of piloting it by the starlight and the moonlight, hoping that we're going to get to the port where we think our destination is, and all we've got to guide us is the flow of the ocean, the tides, and we can't really control that. They're more in charge of us than we are in charge of them, and really all we can do is learn to go from crest to crest and head in the kind of direction that we hope to make, so that we end up where we want to be. But it's not easy, and I think there's a whole period that we've collectively gone through, and that collective consciousness that Jung talks about, and the collective unconscious that Jung talks about, in which we don't know what we've kind of experienced. It's been it's been a change, a groundswell, and it's something that passes, but things aren't left in the same order. They're not left in the same status as they were before. They've shifted and moved. It's a bit like, I've only ever really experienced one significant earthquake, and that was years ago when I used to live in Melton Mowbray, and I was sitting up late at night doing some work, and literally I thought there was a lorry parked outside the house, a big articulated truck, but it wasn't. It was this rumble and roar, and then the next minute the house just shook a couple of inches off the ground and then settled back down again. It was mild in comparison to the earthquakes that you experience in Japan, but it was noticeable, it was notable, and it was still, and you kind of confused afterwards. it kind of speaks to our core experience, our core inner psyche that says, hang on a minute, something has just happened, that the ground below us has just shook. And I think the pandemic has been something along those lines, is that we're no longer as certain as we were. A lot of people are going to rush about telling you that they're absolutely certain about how everything's going to work out and where it's going to be, but those kind of people I think we should avoid, if I'm honest, because we should be asking questions of what has changed, what is different, how do we respond to things, what did we go through, what have we experienced, how is it that we're going to manage. And one of the things I'm really keen to encourage is that we have more dialogue and discussion among us. So using these programs and using these audio walks and kind of like a diary is to get out and really start thinking about these things and talking with people about how this might be an experience that we really need to remember and memorialise to some extent, but also to find out what the new landscape is like and where the fault lines are and where what's changed in what is now a mountain, what was previously a valley. This kind of geologically, this happens over many millions of years, but psychologically, there can be a small shift in the structure of our collective consciousness, and we will go in a different direction. And what is that? What are the things that we most valued as we experienced the pandemic? What are the things that we cling on to, that we value, and that we, is it everybody to the lifeboats, look after yourself first, or is there a kind of broader nobody left behind and nobody left out ethos? And we kind of need to think about who we are and what we are and how we manage that change. And are we prepared in the future? Do we have enough lifeboats for the future? So, discussions like this through what we can do through community radio, I think are valuable and important, and we should be encouraging more dialogue and encouraging more discussion. Don't have to all agree with each other. That's the point of a conversation and a discussion. But we want to find out where we're coming from. What is it that motivates and what underpins our thinking? So if we've got a position on something and we're fixed to it, why? If we're fluid about our thinking and we don't hold anything for, certain, why? What is it that is we're kind of moving around? What is it we're dancing around? So hopefully I'll kind of continue to develop this and be a bit more confident about developing it as well.
Try our best to hold it, but seen beyond yourself, then you may find peace of mind is waiting there. And the time will come when you see we're all one, and life flows on within you and without you.
So I'm just walking along the Grand Union Canal, and so just cut the whiff of burning. There's an old warehouse which is full of engineering works, and they must be doing something. Lights are on. They must be making something inside, and there was a sudden whiff of kind of caustic flame, smoke. Something was smouldering. So I'm walking along the canal, and it's very calm today. There are geese and ducks and swans about. There's a couple of geese on the other bank. Unfortunately, I'm only wearing my contact lenses, so they're not very sharp for me to see. If they're a bit closer, I could give you a bit more of a detailed description. But they're kind of a pair of them stood on the opposite bank, white-breasted and black necks, and just looking out over the canal. And in front of me, I'm heading towards the Walkers Stadium, which would goes through the city and goes through De Montfort University, and from there you can either go into the town in the city centre, or you can turn and go to what is known as the West End, which is the area where I live. So I've just walked past the Walkers Stadium. Is it still called? The Leicester City Football Club King Power Stadium. That's what it's called. And just walked through the Freeman's Meadow Lock. And there's a group of people sitting around. A couple of groups of people sitting around. It looks like there's a Pokemon thing out at the moment. So they've catching up on whatever adventures that Pokemon brings them. And one of the things I was reading from Carl Jung, which was a really interesting thing, was about how we live with myth. And he says something like, none of us can live without, we are sustained and we're immersed in a myth. There is a story that we identify with in a very deep way, core-rooted story, which we can't choose to ignore, and which shapes us, defines us. And one of the things he says is it's a bit like you're walking through a city, a crowded city, and you find an obelisk, an ancient Roman obelisk in the middle of the city. It could be any city. This is the kind of thing you find in Paris. And on the obelisk is an inscription to a motto to, I don't know, a Roman general or a Greek god or something. And it's there. And he says that's what our psyche is like in many ways. That there's, we have the busy interactions of city life, of travelling around, of the kind of activation, everybody out doing things. But occasionally we'll stumble across something which has deeper roots, which have been set in our collective unconscious over many generations, and indeed over many thousands of years, which we can't ignore, which define us, and which shape us in different ways, and different cultures have different reference points. But what do they mean, and how do we engage with them, and how do we use them? And so, it's what is it? What's the core myth that we live with? For many, it's the religious myth. It's the in Western Europe, it is the Judeo-Christian ideal for many centuries, and then that was taken over by the Enlightenment and the way in which scientific rationalism came to the fore. And what Jung argues is these things aren't fixed and they change over time, but we've got to try and understand how they're shaped and what they mean for us, and that we still carry some of those core concepts with us, and those core archetypal principles and energies with us. And it's interesting, the kind of archetypal, which means original, or the origin point of something that extends back to an origin point, but it's more of a kind of an energy than a thing. So it's kind of quite dynamic, it's not fixed, and it's how these things interact. So if you think of the way that gravity shapes the solar system, gravity shapes the galaxy, gravity shapes the universe, you end up with these patterns that emerge. And that's the same with our unconsciousness, our unconscious psyche and our conscious psyche, that they're shaped by these patterns which have these archetypal roots and archetypal points of reference which we return to. And that it's interesting to explore it in terms of, again, as I suggested earlier, when things have been turned over and changed, and there's been a shift in people's opinion and people's ideas and the way people interact, and what we prioritise and what values we hold on to. And we're living through a period at the moment, I would suggest, where a lot of our what we have held on to is being tested, and is we're having to think, what is it we're going to need in the future? Now, if we just dig our heels in and commit ourselves to being like it was in the past, that's not going to succeed. It's going to be quite brittle and it'll break at some point. And it's not about being so flexible that you merge into the background. It's about finding where the contours are, and about, kind of like you would on a toboggan, I suppose, going down a snowy hill. You would seek out where the bumps are, and you'd seek to move in a direction that is suited to where you want to be. But you kind of got to get on the toboggan and ride it about a bit. I suppose. So it's that's why, in a way, with these sound walks, I kind of don't try and think about it too much. I just don't know if I'm really making any kind of sense. It's more a case of just expanding my thoughts as I go along, and then worry about whether they make sense afterwards. And I'm happy to do that, and I'm happy to facilitate other people to do that as well, because I kind of find that quite fascinating, and kind of find it quite a pleasurable thing to draw out somebody's thoughts, not to pin them into a particular mould, but to find out what they're thinking. So if you want to take part in one of these sound walks, or a meet up for a coffee and have a chat and talk about things that have helped you to focus your attention or distract your attention while we've been through the lockdown, and now that we're coming out of it, then I'm more than happy to find a time, book a time, and come and meet up. Just get in touch with me on Twitter or Instagram at RobWMedia, or you can email me rob@robwatsonmedia.net. These go out as a podcast via the Distraction Therapy tag. So search for that on iTunes and Google, and it goes out on a radio programme on Leicester Community Radio and Sound Art Radio. So tune in to them.
Yeah. That's what. slip away with you. And if you said you loved me, how could I mind? Is there another side to everything you do? Taking the country, you'll never win. Gentlemen, take Polaroids. They fall in love. They fall in love. Gentlemen, take Polaroids. They fall in love. They fall in love. Breathe life into me, spin me around, and I'll just sit and wonder why. Just a foreign town with a foreign mind. Why is everything so cut and dry? The taste of country, you'll never know. Gentlemen, take Polaroids. They fall in love. They fall in love. Gentlemen, take Polaroids. They fall in love.
You've been listening to Distraction Therapy with me, Rob Watson. Find out more at robwatsonmedia.net or follow me on Instagram and Twitter at RobWMedia.